Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. It's Saturday afternoon here in London. It's almost 2 p.m. I'm doing an owner stories today. This is the owner stories that I've been looking forward to, actually. The owner stories today is number 15, and we are talking to Nick, and Nick is from the UK. Nick, I am really interested in talking to because he has just purchased a car that I've been searching for. You've read the title, you know what it is. There's no way I can hide it. He's bought a 912. So we're going to talk to Nick about his process, what he thinks about the car, you know, how the process has been getting the car into the UK. It's going to be a really interesting owner stories, so stick with us to the end. Okay, so let me get Zoom fired up. Let me open the chat and let's start talking to Nick. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Like I said, this is number 15. It's getting very hard for me to remember the numbers of these owner series because I am actually recording them a few weeks in advance now. So hopefully I haven't got it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's number 15. And like I said, today I have someone who I've been wanting to talk to for some time. We've chatted briefly on Instagram. Nick is coming from the UK, and Nick has something that I really want. So we're going to get into that shortly. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, great to be speaking with Michael. I know we've chatted a little while about getting some time together, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so we're doing this on a Saturday, as I said in the sort of beginning intro. So we're doing this on a Saturday in London, and the sun is actually out here, which is quite surprising here in Canary Wharf. But so. I'm just going to update the listeners, basically, Nick, just with a little intro. So Nick is he's on Instagram, and you should check out the Instagram while we're talking before we start actually getting into the chat. He's on Instagram. It's at the Classic Series. Is that it, Nick?
That's right. Yeah,
the Classic Series.
Yep.
So it's the Classic Series on Instagram. So check that out. There's lots of great images on there. Nick's obviously also a photographer because the images are very, very good. And Nick is from the UK, like I said. So I just looked at your Instagram just before we came live, actually, and it seems that you have a really strong background with classics and appreciation of classics. So the usual question I ask to start this podcast, the Owner Stories podcast, Nick, if you listened to them before, is, you know, have you always, you know, what is your first impression of Porsche? What is your first thought that you wanted one? Was it, you know, when you were a kid, or was it when you later in life, or is it just something that's happened in the past couple of weeks kind of thing? But I want to sort of tie that back into the fact of your love for classics, which obviously you do have a love for classic cars. So
sure. Yeah.
What was it about the Porsche that drew you to it?
I think you're right in the fact it's probably obvious from my Instagram feed, but I've always been into classic cars, and I suppose dare I say, at the age I am now, some of them weren't so classic when I found them first time round. My first sort of car was an original Mini, which is probably slightly cliche to some, but I still adore the original classic Mini. I think it's one of those absolute iconic vehicles, as iconic in shape, dare I say it, as, you know, perhaps the 911 and probably a handful of others, but no more. So it's always been classic cars for me. I've run them regularly. I try and run them as my daily car. So reliability has always been important. But yeah, I mean, for me, Porsche has been always at the very top of the dream list. I've owned too many cars over the years, lots and lots in a long list. Tried lots, you know, kind of some were to tick the box, some were dream chased cars. Coming back to Mini, I always wanted an original 60s Mini Cooper, which I managed to scratch that itch a few years ago. I had a Mark II 69 Cooper S, which was
nice.
Beautiful car.
Very nice.
So yeah, the iconic Porsche lines, and the 911 or derivative thereof has always been at the top of the list.
So you haven't owned a Porsche before, though, have you? This will be your first car. This is the first one you've actually owned.
Yes, I have. This would be my fourth Porsche, but I would say first air-cooled.
Yep.
Some years ago, probably 12, 15, maybe, something like that. I had a Boxster was my first Porsche. I followed it by a facelift Boxster at the time, both 986 model Boxsters.
Okay.
And then more recently, I had a 944 up until early part of this year.
Just the base 944 or something?
Yeah, 2.5, fairly base model. But it was really, I chased for quite some time the right one. I'm quite particular in finding cars. I think you're similar to me in the fact that, it's a bit of a journey to get exactly what I'm looking for, or as close as possible. It was a bit of a journey to find that. I've always loved the 944, and I would strongly recommend anybody to either get a ride in one if you can, or own one. They're a brilliant car, and they really are a daily driver as well.
So that's the grey one on your Instagram, is it? The blue
That's
grey
right,
colour.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did see that actually. I did see that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't think it was yours. So when you bought the Boxsters, did you buy them new or you bought them used? Used.
No, they were used. So the first one was I think it was almost one of the very first ones in the 986. It was a 1998 2.5, so it was the first model, first engine size, pre-facelift. I learned a lot with that car. It stung me badly.
Right.
It taught me there's no such thing as a cheap Porsche, really. I bought
Okay, so it had issues? It eventually had issues?
Yeah. It cost me in major parts over time, major servicing. I loved it. It was my first Porsche, and it meant I sort of, again, sort of scratched that itch. But yeah, it did cost me dearly in the end.
Okay, so you had the two Boxsters, then you go into the 944. So the 944 was quite recent. So you sold the 944, the transaxle 944 just before you started looking for the 912?
I was looking before that, but I'd had it maybe a year, something like that. I hadn't actually intended to sell it. It was one of those scenarios where, as I say, I've always got I guess like many people, you've always got one eye on the market anyway. See what's going on, see how prices are, what's coming up. And so I put out a couple of feelers for a 912. I kind of was getting that feeling that if I didn't make the jump and do something about what I felt was a true air-cooled Porsche in terms of be it a 911 or a 912. By that point, I think I'd pretty much made up my mind. 911s were getting outside my budget unless something of a miracle happened. So the 912, I started looking quite seriously for some time. And it was a case of one came up, so it was time to part with the 944 to part fund it. I made a good sale. It went to a great home, another passionate Porsche enthusiast, and the market was good for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The market's getting very strong for the 944. So you've been searching. So you've been searching, Nick, from this year or last year. You started when you first decided. You thought, okay, I want a 911 or a 912. You probably did the same thing as me. You look at the prices and go, okay, a 912 seems to be a better choice.
Yeah, that's right.
So you started searching, and how long did the search take you?
The 912 I've been looking at probably at some point sort of mid to late last year. The 911 I've been looking at for years.
Okay.
To give you some indication, I bought my first Boxster at a time where I think if I'd have found a little bit more pocket money down the back of the couch, I probably could have plumped for a 964 that needed a bit of work. And
right.
For reasons of regret now, I took the Boxster route.
Yeah, the 964 is that was the surprise one. That was the surprise one. How quickly it went up. So okay, so now I don't feel so bad. So you started looking last year, and I know Ajmal will be listening to this because he always gives me a hard time on how long it's taking me to find one. So you started last year, and what did you do when you first started searching? Did you go to the usual places, in the US? You're obviously searching for a US one, right? Because the prices in the UK are a little bit too high.
Yeah, I think dominantly it was US. I did look in the UK. And there are. It's a fun. You'll know. I mean, the market's funny in the fact that you start to get a feeling for where the prices are. I mean, 911s especially, given the different models, whether you're looking at an F body, G body, a 996, you get a ballpark figure or range of where each of those models sit.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden a curveball comes up, and so it's the same with the 912. They sit within a bracket in the UK, for example, which is probably one of the strongest markets for them.
Yes.
Close followed by Europe, I guess. And then all of a sudden you'll get something, and you almost don't believe it because the price somehow sits outside the norm. And there was maybe one or two that cropped up like that in the UK, and I couldn't move quick enough. And quite often, you'll keep a track on, piston heads and car and classic and all the usual stuff. But they might change hands very quickly in forums or Facebook groups. Facebook groups are great for obviously intel and getting to know a scene and things like that. I think they're fast becoming the sort of overtake of what we used to do with forums. But yeah, you're right. US market is definitely, if you're looking for something with better value, dare I say it, you're probably going to get more car for the money. Yes. But of course, you're left-hand drive, which doesn't suit everyone.
But the thing is, most 912s are left-hand drive, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there actually any right-hand drive ones? I'm not even sure if they even exist.
There are, but there are very few numbers. I know in the sort of scene, if you like, in the UK, there is a couple of right-hand drives
really?
I'm aware of. Yeah, but
so they must be a premium then, because there'd be very limited numbers. Yeah. Very limited numbers. So you started doing the research. You did the usual thing with forums and groups and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and then you found. I think I'm going to jump straight to this. Then you found the 912 that you think, okay, this is the one. So what did you do then? You know what I mean? Because you've done the initial research. Yeah, you've done that initial research. So what do you do when it is in the US, and how do you ensure that it is okay?
Yeah, so I mean, with mine, I put out a few sort of messages onto a few forums saying that I was looking for something. I gave a fair indication as to the kind of condition I was after. I mean, you'll be aware that there's you can get into it fairly low end, but you're looking at a bit of a project, and that's not for me. I want to be able to drive it. I don't mind, playing with it over time, but it's got to be what I'd term, drivable, usable. And I try and use mine as much as possible. So I put out that kind of want, and in the end, the car and the owner found me. I got a random email one day. In my inbox saying, I spotted one of your calls for 912 and I've got something you might be interested in. It wasn't advertised anywhere.
Okay.
The owner wasn't particularly looking to sell. We're talking sort of early part of this year, and obviously we know what kind of year it's been. So whether that had an impact from getting rid of it, I don't know. But but you're right. He was based in the US. So there was no way I was going to physically see the car. So I started really just getting to know the guy. I spent time on the phone with him. I did video calls with him around the car several times. Really got to show me the car inside and out. I think in the end I was in receipt of something like 300 to 400 photographs of the car.
Wow. Okay.
So I kind of did much sort of diligence on the guy himself and the car, albeit remotely.
Okay. So tell the listeners, because we haven't actually completely told them what it is, but tell the listeners what you actually bought, the year and the whole history of the car. So it's a 912, and what year is it?
It's 1968 912, and it's fairly stock standard. It's got a good story to it, and it's got a good history to it, which I like. I like a car with a story to it. I'm quite fortunate in that it's got a fairly well documented history with it, and that's sort of made up of receipts and books. And I always had, as I said, a really lengthy conversation with the current owner. I've got the story of the previous owner. And I've also got sort of traced back to the original sale and first owner.
All right. So it has all the cardex and it has all the information.
That's right.
So everything came with it. The original service manual book.
Yeah, I've got manual books with it. There's gaps in the very early days, but that doesn't really concern me. I mean, it's not, I'm not talking a perfect car here. It's not concourse. It's not without gaps in history. I mean, for example, it's not matching numbers, which I know is a big deal for some.
Okay.
It's got a year correct engine in it. And most of the car is original.
But we talk about matching numbers, Nick, and like I said, there's many things online and many podcasts where they talk about this, where that was just a common thing where they switched out the engines, correct?
Yeah.
Especially when, if something went wrong with the engine, the shop might have had another engine in the corner and they said, you want to put that one in, it's the same year, and they just switch it out. I mean, I think that was quite common in 70s Porsches as well, right?
Yeah, and you're also talking about a car which at one stage in its life was worth very little money.
Yes, exactly.
These sort of swaps happened very easily. So it doesn't concern me. The car's other than the fact it's not matching numbers, it's in great shape now. We'll come to that. But
okay, so it's a 1968 short wheelbase.
Yes.
It's in white, and the interior is black.
Yep, it's very. I don't want to use the word basic, but it's very simplistic in its kind of look. So it's ivory white. Yeah, you're right. It's short wheelbase. It's 68, which was a single model year,
Yes.
which has its pluses and minuses when finding parts.
I wondered that. I'm going to ask you that question about the 68, because some people like it and some people don't like it because of the emissions, right? But then other people say it's quite rare because it was just for that 1 year. But it's harder to get parts because it was only for that 1 year.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I am fortunate that a lot of the car is with the car, if that makes sense. So, the interior is all there. There's nothing really missing. It's genuinely got most of its original parts. But so, for example, I've recently had to buy door cards. It didn't. There was parts of the door card missing. The door pocket.
Okay.
I've done a bit of research over recent months into the 68 year. And one of those unique pieces for 1968 was the door cards.
Yep.
They were only made for a single year.
Yes.
Particularly the door pockets. So trying to source a single year door card has been quite a tricky thing. I've managed to do it. So it's little things like that. But I kind of like that. Again, it's something a bit different. I think for me, a car needs to stand out in some way, and I don't mean sort of physically, bright colours, wraps, and racing decals, things like that. I just like something that sits a little bit outside of the norm.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that interests me, whether it's a story or where the car's been, or its place within the manufacturer's history.
So just going back to the door cards, are you someone that wants to get original parts? You wouldn't get the door cards, say, from someone that reproduces the door cards? I mean, there's reproductions, right? And a lot of and it's hard to know with 912s if you've got a reproduction dash or you've got a reproduction seat. So
yeah. So I'm not adverse to doing aftermarket parts on certain cars. I've certainly done it in the past. But there's an element with Porsche, unfortunately, where people dub it Porsche tax. So you get a part, and it may even fit from another car, but at the minute you have it under that kind of Porsche brand name, the price seems to go up in some regard. It doesn't always happen, but and of course, then when you start remaking things, and as you say, people will remanufacture original parts that aren't available. Again, this kind of elevated price comes in, and that's fine. There are exclusive cars in some sense, but for me, I think if I can find original, it's just that, it's original. But B, if you can box a bit clever, and you can pay a sensible price. I've just had to say,
where did you find the door cards?
They were through Facebook, I think it was. Looked on eBay and all the usual places.
I'm just looking at the images you sent me in DM. What are the wheels on your car?
So they're the original steel wheels.
Okay, perfect.
And they're the wider 5.5
Nice.
steel, which I think they came in again in '68.
Yeah, the steel
Why?
wheels are definitely the pick of the wheels, that's for sure. So,
Yeah, I think Fuchs is a bit. I love Fuchs wheels. Don't get me wrong, but they wouldn't work for me on this car.
no, they just don't work on a 912. I don't know. I know there's always a few for sale with them on there, and people have switched them out for reproductions or whatever. But I just think the steel wheel is just that classic look, either with or without the hubcap. You know what I mean? Both of it
Yeah, I'm still
looks good.
undecided on that.
Yeah, I do like that non-hubcap look. I have to say that rawer look. So going back to the owner, so this owner that you found it from in the US, he was heavily involved in the Porsche community in the US. He was an older guy, or he'd owned the car for a long time. What was the history behind that? How did you get to the point where you go, okay, I trust this guy, even though you have all the video calls?
Yeah.
What was it that made you think, okay, this is going to be okay? I can ship this car over from the US.
Yeah, so I'd pressed him on the history of the car, and I also got him to speak with the previous owner, because he was the one who was really into the Porsche scene. He was an old guy who'd unfortunately now suffered from Alzheimer's. He'd had the car for a long, long time, and his brother had done a lot of work in the car during the '80s, I think it was. It says in the history. Looked after it, and he'd entered it into concourse for Porsche Club America in the '90s, I think. You kind of get the feel that the car, I'd say it's in very good shape now, but you get the feeling that at one point in its life, it would have been, it could have easily been entered in a concourse
It
type
it looks
event.
really looked after though. The image you sent me in the garage wherever it is, it looks in very very good condition. I mean, it's almost
Yeah,
like I have to, like what you said. What you're looking for. That for me is what I'm looking for. Where it's not too beat up. It's quite reliable. It's been well looked after, and it's like the perfect example. You don't really have to do that much to the body, do you? It looks perfect to me.
no, that's right. Maybe it's had paint, maybe it hasn't. It's more than likely, but again, it's been done well at some point. It's very presentable, but equally, it's not perfect because I want to drive it, I want to use it. I don't want to worry about taking it out. So yeah, it sits in that perfect sort of space for me.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so to come back to your question,
Yes.
so I pressed the guy about its history, and I ended up with quite a full log of sort of the journey of the car. Um, but I also spoke to, so he deals occasionally in selling classic cars anyway and exporting on occasion. Bizarrely, he also deals in exporting things like jukeboxes and other sort of vintage
Oh, okay.
memorabilia.
Americana type
Yeah,
exporter.
exactly. That's right. Yeah. So I actually rang up a couple of his customers here in the UK and said, "Look, who is this guy? First of all, do you know who I'm talking about? And
Yeah. Yeah.
no, would you recommend him? Is he a straight up kind of guy?" And it was, I'd spent a few months just really, yeah, getting myself comfortable because this was the first time I'd ever done something like this. I'd never imported before. And I think I did well on the price, but it was still a sum of money which I was sending overseas to somebody I've never met.
That's
And
what I
God
was going to
forbid,
ask.
I
Yeah.
didn't know whether something would turn up at all or what would turn up.
Yeah, because he contacted you out of the blue in a way. He contacted you
Yeah,
through
yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? So you never know what the situation is. The car
No.
seems in great condition. So you make a decision on the car, Nick. You decide, okay, I'm going to take this car. I trust this guy. How did you start working out the process to get it imported into the UK and exported out of the US? Did you contact one of these brokers, these guys that do look after everything for you, or did you say I can just sort of do this myself by contacting shipping companies, etc.?
No, I wanted the confidence of somebody who'd could take care of the whole process. Really, as I said, I'd not done it before. I think in hindsight, now I've gone through it, I probably would take on some of the process myself. Um, but a friend of mine who slightly separate story. But we went to university together. We grew up on Golf GTIs and various hot hatches, and again, we are still big Porsche fans. In fact, he's just not long imported a G-body 911 himself.
Oh, okay, great.
Um, but he imported an American muscle car a few years ago, so he had some insight into what he'd been through. So I sort of picked his brains on the import process. But ultimately, yeah, I ended up going with a broker who handled the whole situation. So you get a quote, they break it down, the whole process, and you pay one lump sum or a couple of payments, and they take you through the full journey from, pick up in the US, overland shipping, cargo ship, and then, out of the port this end and to your door.
How did you find that broker? Was that through Porsche Club or through a Porsche group, or
No,
how did you know the right person to go with? Because there's quite a few. You do a search for them. There's multitude that come up, and you got to work which is going to be the good one.
Yeah, I'd been recommended a couple. I'd also watched a couple of YouTube videos on people having gone through an import process themselves. So I think I rang 3 or 4 in the end, had a good conversation with them. Again, got comfortable with one particular company. They weren't the cheapest, but they certainly weren't the most expensive. So yeah, I kind of, again, I sort of took the time to just get comfortable with one of the companies, really.
Yeah, because on a previous owner's stories with Paul from New Zealand, Paul had the G50 3.2 Carrera, and he's got a 997 Carrera GTS, and he bought that Carrera GTS from the UK, and he did the same thing. He found a broker. I think it was someone his friend had used, but that broker actually found the car for him, went and looked at the car, and also did all the shipping and everything. So that was the whole service.
Yeah.
So I guess there's really good people out there. So this car that you bought, and I don't want you to divulge the price, of course, but the price based on US pricing, was it low range, mid range, or high range, based on the current US sort of prices for 912? And I know they've gone up, and I know since May this year they've gone up a lot.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, I as I sit here today, and I have been looking, as we still do, even when you bought a car, you still look. I don't know what that's about.
See if you can find another one, a better one.
You've done the deal.
Yeah.
You've got it.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I guess is that reassurance? Have I bought something that I shouldn't have done? Yeah. As I said, my friend who also imported a couple of months ahead of me, I keep sort of having this conversation, have we done the right thing? And,
you know what it is? It's not to convince yourself because you're happy with it. It's to convince others that are close to you that you were clever and you made a really good deal. I think that's what it is. It's the everyone else. Yeah.
But no, I think originally I was very clear with the budget I wanted to work within. So I set aside that budget to work with, including shipping. So I had to turn down a couple because they were just a step too far. But this one, it sat within my budget. And I think, to be frank, I got lucky.
Okay.
I just got lucky. Whether it was timing, situation, but I paid lower end. And I think, it's the car's now in with a specialist in the UK. Having an initial check over, it's waiting for a UK registration so I can get it legally on the road. And all indications so far is it's pretty good.
Okay.
I'm really pleased. Yeah.
Okay, so the cost to get it into the UK, if someone's listening and thinking, okay, I want to do this, I have a vague idea how to get the cost into Australia. It does add up quite quickly when you add, Australia has luxury car tax if it's over 66,000 landed with freight and everything. You don't pay duty because it's over 30 years old, but you pay 10% GST, so you pay a goods and service tax on top of that. When you're sending something to Australia, they always say, for the 912, they say it seems inflated to me, but someone said to allocate 5,000 for shipping. I don't know whether that includes insurance or whatever. I mean, obviously Australia's further. This is US to Australia export.
Yeah.
They always say add 5,000 in, and then work out your cost. And there's calculators online, and I go to them all the time when when I find something to see how much it costs. And the price grows very, very quickly. Now, on the 912 you bought from the US, what the fees and and all the extra bits you had to add on? Did that add 10% onto the value of the car? Did it add 5% on the value of the car?
It was in the region of about 10%, I think, something like that. It shifted as well because, and with the US, you'll also look at, and I think I probably overlooked it slightly, it depends where your car is. So if you're shipping out of East Coast or West Coast as a port, you've got to also think about where your car is, because there's a significant overland journey to be done if it's in the middle of the country.
Yeah, good point, actually. The transport to the ship, to the port. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that will add a cost, not to be underestimated.
So did you miss that cost, or that cost just surprised you when it
It
came
cost
through
me a
from
bit
your...
more. I mean, it wasn't significant, but it added a bit. Mine ended up going out of New York, and its last owner was up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So it was
So
a bit
it-
of an overland.
So it lands into the UK. So eventually it gets on the ship. It takes, I mean, how long did it take? About 3 months or something like that? It took a while, you said, right?
Well, that was the thing. The actual journey on the ship only took 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that.
Okay.
My journey with this. I mean, to give you an idea, I agreed. I'd have the car with the owner back in June, something like that. And it arrived eventually late November, mid to late November.
Oh, okay.
And that's purely, well, I say purely, it was partly because I was making sure I was doing the right thing. I was fortunate it wasn't publicly advertised, so I wasn't up against competition, because as you'll know, as soon as one comes up, people are all over it.
Exactly.
If you want, you've got to jump. So I wasn't up against that, which was really fortunate. But I did take my time, as I said before, getting to know the guy and getting to know the car. So there was a bit of delay in that. But frankly, it was just the year we've had, trying to get shipping organised. It sat at the port for longer than it would have done in normal.
It's actually probably the worst time. I mean, they say it's a good time because people are willing to sell, but it seems to me that prices were actually up. So if you got a good buy, that's actually really good. But then all the other side of it is all delayed, isn't it? There's an extra time and an extra stress involved if your car is just sitting somewhere and you're not sure what's happening.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was in the US, of course, you have a title, which is ownership of the car.
Yes.
So with this particular car, he hadn't long had it himself. When he bought it from the previous owner, the older guy who sadly had dementia.
Yeah.
So he then, because he was going to sell it to me, he had to get the title in his name before he was allowed to sell it to me. And even the title, because of coronavirus, took so long to get Department of Transport to get the title in his name. So,
but that's the most important thing, to get that title.
A journey
isn't
of delays.
Yeah. So when it lands in the UK, how is the UK government? How is customs, immigration, or who's ever dealing with it? Are they fast? Do they do? I mean, when a car goes to Australia, it has to be, before it leaves the port, wherever you're buying it from in the US, it has to be completely cleaned underneath. It can't have any dirt. It can't have anything on the car. It has to be steam cleaned and everything. Is the UK very particular about things like that, or it's an easier process?
Yeah, I'm not aware it went through anywhere near as stringent sort of check over as that. It would normally be fairly quick. I mean, most of the companies I spoke to would say that once it's in the port, it should be back out, and if you want to deliver to your home or wherever, it's a matter of days. But again, just unfortunate, really. It was due into Felixstowe in the UK, and they had massive issues with a backlog of containers coming in from
right.
So it sat still there. As I say, the whole journey's just been delay after delay. But no, normally it's very quick.
Okay. So then when you sent me the message, you literally had just you'd seen the car for the first time, right? I think when you sent me that Instagram message, you said you've just collected the car, or you've seen the car, and you sent that image. Right. I don't know whether it was just when you got it, but it was quite soon after. So where do you get the car? You get the car delivered to the mechanic, to the Porsche specialist, or is that what you decided to do?
Yeah, I said to the shipping company, I wanted it taken straight to a specialist, and this is a guy who I've come to know through sort of a local Porsche scene. So there's a few other guys in my area, I guess, sort of southern England, who there's a handful of them have either had 912s or currently have them, or other 911s, 356, that kind of thing. So and he was known to a couple of these guys, so recommended. He's an ex-Porsche mechanic. So knows.
But this is the same guy that Ajmal uses, right? Is
that that's right.
Where you've got your car.
Classic Jack.
Jack. Yeah.
So it's sitting there at the moment. And when I spoke to you originally, I think sent photos through. That was the first time I'd actually laid eyes on the car.
Yeah.
So that was great.
The first thing I thought when I saw that car, I thought, how come I haven't seen this car come up online? That was the first thing that came into my mind. I thought, this is a US car. Like I'm scouring, Auto Tempest. I'm going through all these things, and I thought I've never
Yeah,
seen that car come up. So I think,
yeah.
like you said, that's half the battle that he contacted you. It wasn't advertised,
Mm.
and maybe that made the price slightly lower. You think that it actually didn't go on the
Possibly,
on the
possibly
market?
so. Uh, it's difficult because I think the matching numbers thing is odd. Some people really get hung up about it. He in his head he felt he said to me he felt that it would stand against the car. You do get people inquire and sort of drill into the car, and then if certain things like that don't tick the boxes, and people can get really funny about it,
Yeah.
and whether it has a knock-on effect or value, I think it does, but not. I think if you really want, it depends why you want a car, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
it's the same for you. I think you said to me that you're after the car because it's something that you either dreamt about for a long time, or you really particularly just you want that car. It's not you don't want it whatever, there has to be some parameters that you'll work with. But I think the matching numbers thing, to my mind, is if you really want something concourse and perfect, fine,
Yes.
that's okay. That's absolutely understandable. But
Yeah,
I don't
I
want
agree.
something.
I agree. It's not a big deal for me. I don't think, it doesn't have to be a matching numbers car. It's more important, I think, that it's reasonably mechanically sound and it's reasonably rust free. Like there's only little bits of surface rust maybe on
Yeah,
the,
that's right.
on the
Yeah.
smuggler's box or here and there, but reasonably
Mm.
rust free is the main thing. I just want to get into the so it arrives in the UK. The first time you see it, did it meet your expectations? Did you look at it and go, okay, all those videos were worthwhile, or hang on, I've made an error. I missed that.
It I stood there for a while, just kind of genuinely speechless, and I don't mean that in that it was, as I say, it was some concourse car, because it's not. But I guess it was relief as well, because I'd spent
Yeah.
a month chasing this car. The money had gone off way before it arrived because of all the delay, so I was still kind of very nervous about, will something turn up at all? What the hell's it going to look like? Will it run? And it did all of those things. I mean, it was driven onto it was driven into the container. It was driven off of trailers this end. It drives. I mean, it needs a tune up. It needs, it's dropping a bit of oil here and there. Not perfect, but it starts, stops. It looks very, very respectable. Most of the original parts are there. So I was I think it was just relief. And yeah, I'd actually pulled this off.
That's fantastic. Yeah. But there was so the body and everything was as expected. There was no surprises, nothing that you came across. Has
No,
the car's rust free? Sorry, Nick, the car is pretty much rust free.
it's almost. I mean, it had some pan work years ago. So one driver's side floor pan was redone, but again, it was done in a period where the cars were worth very little. So I'd say it's. And again, I've had it checked since. Now that it's here, it's solid. It's safe, which is the main thing for me. I always take my kids out in the classic cars. They love the old cars, and it's a sort of a family thing for us. So I
Yeah.
need the car to be safe and reliable. So it's solid, but it's untidy. I mean, if you look at it now, you'd probably want to, cut it out and, make a better
Make it
job of it.
perfect. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not rusty. It hasn't gone rusty since it was done. It's just not the neatest job. And to be honest, because it's underneath, it doesn't really bother me. One day I might get it done.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not a
So
major.
so the car's in the car's in with the specialist. So
Mm.
what has to be done mechanically? What are the things that need to be worked upon after after Jack's done the full check over and looked at everything? What is it?
Yeah.
What is the issues?
So there's really only two headline issues with the car. One is it is dropping oil. So we're going to do a complete kind of engine seal refresh, and just kind of chase the drips,
Yeah. Yeah.
see what remains after
Yeah.
that. And the other one was the brakes were binding. Two of the brakes I think were binding. So kind of got a caliper rebuild kit, and brake lines, again, safety's top of the list. So those are really the only two headline items that need addressing. It will need tuning up a bit, obviously, for emissions. I intend to MOT it, which is the kind of safety road test here in the UK.
Okay.
It doesn't need one. I don't think it legally needs one given its age, but I always tend to MOT my old classics. It's just a peace of mind thing.
So for the MOT, is everything intact for the MOT? Does it need seatbelts? Does it need, do the lights need to be changed in the UK compared to US cars? Because in Australia, I think you have to change the lights, or you have to change the bulbs or the direction of the lights. You have to make sure you have retractable seatbelts.
Yeah, the seatbelts, again, given its age, you actually don't need any.
Okay.
I mean, I have another classic currently. We have an old 71 Land Rover, Series 3, and
nice.
I put seatbelts in that because of my kids. But again, given its age, you don't need to. So for the Porsche, it has front seatbelts in it anyway, and I would put them in, I think, if it didn't. But again, it doesn't need it for the test. Bulbs. I think the turn signals or the indicators need to be changed for orange because I think the US they're red.
Okay.
But yeah, nothing major really. Emissions, it'll need obviously just tuning and make sure it's okay for emissions.
That's a question I want to ask you actually. The 68, I think I was looking at a 68 on classic cars in the UK. It was the orange one, and I actually contacted the guy, but it had a little bit too much rust in it. Okay. Does the 68 have a large something in the front that protrudes from the front? Is that part of the emission system? Is there something that takes up the front in the 68, or am I getting confused with another model year?
I don't know, is the honest answer. I don't recall seeing anything in mind that. Whereabouts does it sit?
In the front, at the front,
yeah.
Closer to the windscreen, there's like a curved bulge in the carpet, because underneath there's actually something to do with the emissions that's been put into the car for the 68 model, because it was, No?
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, I'd have to have a look again.
Okay.
I mean, that's the other thing. As I said to you, I've seen it once, and we're now.
Have you driven it?
No.
You haven't driven it?
It was off the road.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I won't ask that question then. I was going to ask you, how does it feel to drive it for the first time? So you haven't driven it yet?
No, not even driven it yet. No, I had a good look over.
That's not going to change your mind, is it, once you go for that drive?
Oh, God, no.
Don't watch Ajmal's video on YouTube, that first drive where he takes it out for a drive.
Yeah. No, I've driven G-body 911s before.
Okay.
So I kind of know the feel. 911, obviously, but yeah. As I said, I've always had classics. So you have to switch your mindset with classics generally. You're not driving a modern car, nothing close. So, yeah.
But you have good roads near where you live for the classics, right? You live outside of London, so you have good roads
that's
around
right.
that area.
Yeah, so I'm south coast basically. We have a big national park called the New Forest. So there's forest roads, and it's lovely to take a drive through the forest in the good weather, and it's great.
Oh, that's great.
I spend a lot of time up at sort of car shows and things with photography, so I get to kind of drive about the country a little bit.
Yeah, I want to get into that actually. I just want to ask you one more question though. So with the car that's in with the specialist now, with the engine side of it, are you going to try and get more power out of that engine, or are you more wanting to have the engine to be reliable? Which side of the spectrum are you going on? The balance between power and reliability, or you want to get a little bit more power out of the 4-cylinder?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because first and foremost, I want reliability. As I said, I want to use the car as much as possible. It's not going to be, obviously completely foul weather. I'm not going to take it out, but I want to get out there. I know some of the guys in the sort of niche 912 scene, if you like. There are those that tuck them away this time of year, and there's those that just keep using them. And I'm in that camp. Always have been with older cars. I just want to be able to use them. So it has to be reliability for me. It's never going to be a quick car, but as you said, you can do things with them. You can get a bit more power out of the existing engine. You can, this is sort of the 1700 kit. At the moment, I want to get the car on the road, safe, reliable, and get to know it.
Okay.
I just want to spend time with the car. I need to know its niggles, how it drives, what what's next on the jobs list before I start sinking money in the kind of nice to haves. Although that said, I have got plans, to make it my own.
And probably the best thing to do is get a few hundred miles on it, right? To actually drive the car and get the miles on it and see if anything else happens or if anything needs to be done before you start, upgrading other things.
No, that's right. I mean, I've always, I'm also not one to leave my cars alone. I mean, I don't go outlandishly over the top modifications, but I guess I sit in a camp of kind of OEM plus.
Yeah.
You're aware of that. It was similar with the 944. I kind of upgraded certain parts, things like wheels, but was in period, and it was kind of the best offered by Porsche at the time. And I kind of like that feel of kind of keeping within the brand and within period.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm exactly the same as you with that. I like to keep it pretty much OEM.
So there are plans for the car to make it mine, but nothing outlandish.
So what are you planning? You want to share that? What are you planning to do?
Yeah, so I mean, alongside the work that's going to be done, that needs to be done, sort of mechanically, if you like. I think the car, I know the car is going to be lowered. I want it sitting a little bit lower. And again, not on the deck. I know that's, for some people, it's not for me. I appreciate it. But again, it's about usability. So for me, I like the arches filled, but I don't want them, I don't want it scraping the floor.
Is the suspension, the suspension's pretty good on your car? Has it been updated, the suspension, or is it just, stock?
No, I think it's pretty stock, to be honest. It looks in fair shape. I don't think there's any immediate tension. Right. I mean, linked to that, one of the things that again, ideally I'd like to do, and I have done in the past with other classics I've had, is refresh the bushing. As you can imagine, you're talking about a 52-year-old car. So it's not going to be tight as it once was.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's going to be slop in the steering, and so I'd like to go through it and just rebush it. And I'm not talking about poly bushes or anything like that. I'm not a fan of polys, to be honest. But I just kind of OEM equivalent rubber bushing and just get the car tight and as it was intended from the factory.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea.
Really feel the car's originality.
What else was I going to say? So, can we just talk about? So let's talk about your Instagram for a second, because I want to know. So you're a photographer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not my day job. It's my my passion. It was born out of the passion for classic cars, and I started doing it probably more seriously. 3 years ago, maybe something like 2 or 3 years ago, and it gradually built up, and I got asked to cover classic car events, shows. I've done some work for magazines. I've written some articles, but yeah, it's That's
great. That's great. I'm just going to say that again. I'm just going to tell the listeners again. The Classic Series. I'll put the link in the podcast description so you guys can go to it. So the Classic Series on Instagram, check that out. And I want to ask you also, Nick, about the thing you've set up, the classics for carers. Do you want to tell the listeners about that? Because we have a lot of people who listen to this podcast in the UK. UK and US are our main listeners. So I think it might interest some of the people who are listening today.
Yeah, sure. Classics for Carers was born out of this crazy year that we've just had, and gladly coming to a close.
Yeah, agreed.
But part of that was car shows, as I mentioned before. I do a lot of photography at car shows, and attend as an enthusiast for years at car shows, events, motorsport, that kind of thing. And of course, with the pandemic, it all but died almost overnight. The events couldn't go ahead, and so as an enthusiast and a massive classic car community, as you say, in the UK, in the US, and Europe, you're almost left with not nothing to do, but your calendar of usual events was suddenly gone.
Yeah.
And in the UK, we were into a period of lockdown where we weren't even allowed to go out and drive other than for essentials. So it kind of got me thinking that, what could be done to kind of keep the enthusiasm, use the cars. We were also seeing here, as in many other countries, our kind of frontline carers. Here we have the NHS, which is a national health service of nurses, doctors, etc., who were really under strain, looking after everybody who was, succumbing to this to coronavirus. So it was born out of putting on a car show while being a fundraiser. So essentially, what I ended up doing was hosting a couple of stay-at-home car shows.
Okay.
So the idea was that you would roll your classic out of the garage onto your driveway, so it could still be displayed, if you like a proper show. It was something to actually physically do.
Yep.
You get to do the usual prep where you'd polish your car and make a bit of a deal of it before you take it to the show, albeit the show was a few feet down the drive. So, but it meant that people joined in all over the country. We had participants across Europe. In fact, we had some in the States. And then on the day, we shared what we'd rolled out via social media. So, people were posting photos, videos. I did some live chats.
Okay, fantastic. So is there a website people can go to, or it was basically was website, or it was just through social media?
No, it was there's a website as well. So it's classicsforcarers.com, which was the event website. It got great media coverage. I'm really, pleased and really appreciative of the media coverage it got in magazines as well and online. And in the end, through donations through the two events, we raised £17,500 in the end.
That's fantastic. Well done. That's a great thing to do. Well done. Especially during this time when, I don't think people are being selfish. People are being very, open and whatever, but it's a really nice thing to do. That was great. And also sharing your interest and sharing the passion of other people, which is easy to do,
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It brought the kind of classic community together, and people were, thankful that they had something to do. So
yeah. I'll put the links in. I'll put the links in the description, and also when it goes up on YouTube, the audio, so people can actually check that out if they want to. I think that's great, Nick. Is there anything else you want to tell me about your car? I don't think I've missed anything. Is there anything else I need to know?
I'm just anxious to get it on the road.
Yeah, that's the thing, the drive. I was going to say, how does it feel? But you've driven those period 911s before, so you have an idea of how it drives. I noticed your steering wheel is the right one as well, the hockey puck. That's the best steering wheel. Yeah.
No, that's right. I just, as I say, although I've owned Porsches before and classics, but certainly the first air-cooled, which I think it's a big deal for me. I mean, I grew up influenced by things like the Beetle. My auntie, I remember some of my earliest memories. My auntie had an old Beetle, and she used to run me around in that. And it was just that kind of noise, that air-cooled clatter, and it's just as I say, the Porsche has always been top of the list. And as I say, this friend of mine, we spent our university years hankering after Porsches that we thought we'd never owned.
Yeah, I know you've
it is literally kind of. You've kind of made the dream reality, I suppose.
Which is probably what it was when you saw it for the first time and you're standing there. It's a relief that it's actually arrived and you've got it and everything's absolutely okay. But it's also that other side where you're thinking, I can't believe I bought this car. I can't believe I own one. Yeah. It's always that thing, isn't it? I can't believe it. And there it is. But like you said, you just want to get out and drive it. But I think for the listeners, it shows you, if you do your research well, you don't have to find things that are advertised. It's about making, getting to know people who you're going to buy from, getting to know the people who you're shipping with, getting to know, the research that you did has obviously paid off because you've ended up with which looks like from the images a really, really nice example. So I think it does pay to take time to look for cars, for Porsches. Like I said, I always get grief given to me from other people online, my friends, I will call them online, that I take too long in this decision to buy a 912, but it's a pretty big decision and you have to make the right one. So I think you've done well, and it's helped me to think about it as well, your process. Yeah, no,
it's I think the unfortunate side is things move so quickly now. Something appears online and it's gone, and you're not always afforded that time to really think it through. But
yeah, true.
I think you're right. I mean, you stick with it, and you just never know what's going to come up. But I think it is a big decision, and it's if it's something you've hankered after for long enough, you want to be comfortable that you've made the right decision.
Yeah, and the prices, if you're looking at, places like Bring a Trailer and P-Car Market and those, the prices seem to be more inflated now as well. They're really going up quite high.
And
It's very hard to get a bargain.
Yes, and the auctions only sort of exactly that, I think, where you get into a bidding war, again, which I was fortunate not to be a part of, but, you see it happening a lot. And sometimes the prices are justified. There's some stunning examples out there.
Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes you end up spending too much, don't you? You get caught up in that whole auction craze.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You kind of get into that fixation that you must have it. And, you probably haven't really delved into the car as much as you should have done, which is when you get surprised.
Yeah, true. But I think, and I've seen your Land Rover on your Instagram, so I think you've got the perfect 2-car garage now. The Series 3, the Series 3 and the 912. I mean, how much cooler can you get, Nick? Come on. How much cooler can you get than those two cars?
It's a pretty good combination.
You can just keep taking photos of those. I'm looking forward to seeing the images of the 912 start appearing on your feed as well.
Oh, they will. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Nick, I think we'll leave it there. That was great. Thanks for sharing your owner story.
No, thank you. And thanks for having me. And it's always great to listen in and hear other people's experiences as well.
Yeah, no, great to have you on. So thanks so much for that. And like I said, you've this 912 thing, I've got to get it sorted. But like I said, there's plenty of people to talk to online. I keep getting even messages from other people, who have got 912s in the UK and in the US, like sending me messages. In fact, I've had someone the other day who's been sending me cars for sale in the US because he's been finding them. So he's been trying to help me.
I still get cars off to me.
Yeah. So people are very generous. They're very they want to help, which is great. Which is great about the, I guess, Porsche community and classic car community.
It's a very good point, actually. It's worth spending time in that community and just before you take the leap, because you learn a lot. You learn a lot from people's experiences, but you learn a lot from you probably narrow down what you're after and what you should be looking out for as well. In spec and sort of telltale signs of something that's not right. But it's a great community as well. It's very friendly, and there's people willing to share knowledge. I've been involved in lots of different classics over the years, and some communities are better than others, or they're more forthcoming with facts and sort of sharing. And I think that's part of the Porsche appeal. It is a great part, a great community to be involved in.
Yep, absolutely. All right, on that note, I think we're going to end the podcast today. This is PorscheCooled Owner Stories, a number, I forget what number it is, 15. I think it's 15. That was Nick. Nick's from the UK, and Nick owns that beautiful, and it's going to appear on his Instagram, and you can see it when I'll put the link in this description, as I said. 68, short wheelbase 912 in white, and it's very, very nice. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.